because it was in the news and some of you probably heard about it. If you didn't hear about it, we're going to talk about it briefly so you know what's going on. By a show of hands, who heard about or saw anything about President Obama making a big announcement last Tuesday that involved tears being shed? Did you hear about, even if this was all you heard, Obama cried?
Wasn't it something about like
something about guns, right? That was part of it. Does anyone know what that speech was about and what he did last week?
Gun control.
Yes. What about it?
He said that he wants restrictions.
He didn't say he wants. He did. Okay, President Obama signed an executive order into law saying that all sales of guns must come with an FBI background check because there are a couple of ways today that people can sell guns and buy guns without doing an FBI background check. Do you guys know about this? Have you heard?
Like your own gun.
Okay, personal sales are legal. Is anybody in here 18?
I'll be, no.
Next year.
Okay,
This year. 12 months.
let's pretend you are 18. If your stepdad owns a Springfield handgun, could he just straight across sell that to me because I'm older than 21?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You put a piece of paper, I so-and-so sell this gun to this person, and you just sign it, right? And if you've ever done that, you put the serial number of the gun. Just in case that guy goes and like robs a bank, they know it doesn't come back to you. But you do not have to do a background check for a personal sale. I know that blows your mind. That will still continue. You don't have to do a background check for that in Wyoming. But at gun shows and online, you can buy guns. Has anyone ever been to a gun show?
Yeah.
Gun shows are interesting places. You should go to one. He can't buy anything there. However, it's basically like a marketplace. Only instead of buying fruits and vegetables and knickknacks that some grandma sewed in her basement, it's guns, bullets, scopes, beef jerky, and other redneck necessities. And some guy has a table, let's say with like 50 handguns, and he'll sell you one for cash, and some of those people don't have to do background checks on you. President Obama signed an executive order saying now when you sell guns at a gun show or online, everyone has to pass an FBI background check. Have you heard people arguing, debating, saying this is good or this is bad on the news, at the dinner table, or online? Like, has this been a topic you've heard about? Do a lot of people have strong opinions either way? Look where we live. Look what's in your gun safe. A lot of people are fired up about it, right? So here's an important thing to remember. How many of you know what an executive order is?
Like
Isn't it something like the president signed or whatever?
It's like he doesn't care what anyone else says. He doesn't.
You guys are proving my point. Okay? Here's the thing. Like, should we ratify the Treaty of Versailles? It's an interesting question that's worth debating. But before you can debate something, whether it's the Treaty of Versailles or Obama's executive orders on gun control, what do you have to do before you start discussing and debating and arguing?
Know your facts.
If you don't know what an executive order is, you don't get to have an opinion yet. Now, here's what's wonderful. Here's what's wonderful about the time we live in. You have Google, and you can Google executive order and read what it is. Or you can survive until next year, and in government class I'll teach you. It's basically this. The president is the head of the executive branch of government, as you learned in 8th grade. He's in charge of all the federal agencies like the CIA, the Army, NASA, right? He's in charge of the FBI. They're like the federal cops. Now, as their boss, can he tell them what to do?
Yeah.
So an executive order is like a law that doesn't go through Congress. The president just writes it out and signs it. But it only applies to federal agencies. It doesn't apply to me. I do not work for the federal government. It doesn't apply to Tim. He doesn't work for the FBI or NASA. Okay? Another good example with President Obama is a controversial executive order on what other topic about 4 years ago?
ISIL.
Before that was even a big thing. Immigration Okay, is he the boss of the guys who work at the border and search for drugs and illegal aliens? Like, is he their boss as the president? Can he tell them what to do? He's their boss. So, could he write an executive order and tell Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, that's ICE, they're like the FBI of immigration. Could he tell those guys, if you find illegal aliens in our country under age 12, don't deport them? Could he do that as their boss? Is that going to make Congress mad? Because Congress could pass a law to do that, or the gun control thing, but they haven't. So here's his explanation, and then I'll tell you the other side, Tommy. He says because Congress won't close the gun show loophole, I'm going to do it with an executive order. Because everyone should have to do a background check before they buy a gun. Congress hasn't passed a law on that. They could, but they haven't. So he basically says, since you guys won't do it, I'll do it for you. Here's the flip side of that argument. What do a lot of Republicans in Congress and conservative gun owners say about what he's doing with executive orders? I know, why? So he's King Obama doing whatever he wants with the stroke of a pen, right? Now here's the thing. If you don't understand executive orders, do you get an opinion? So I hope you've seen that. If you haven't seen the speech, he cried. Well, not like bawling, but he wiped like 2 tears off his face, talking about the victims of mass shootings and how it keeps him up at night and he sees their faces. It's an interesting speech.
Why don't we watch it?
Up to your old tricks again, I see. The beauty of YouTube is you can watch it anytime you want.
Put a virus on my computer if I look that stuff up.
Yeah, it's called liberalism. That's the virus. Okay. Now, same thing with this week. Before we can have a debate on our topic of the week, should the United States ratify the Treaty of Versailles, do you agree we have to know what we're talking about? Because 99% of the debates that people engage in on Facebook, one or both of them have no clue what they're talking about. Do you guys agree? And is it hard to win an argument when you don't know what you're talking about? So when you find yourself in that situation, take a deep breath and say, I need to talk to an expert, Google stuff, read about it, then I'll get back to you because I don't understand it yet. Okay? Here's what we're going to do. You're going to get a partner for the week. And if Tegan shows up, he'll be... We'll have to change things around. Okay. Do you have good handwriting, relatively speaking? Compare it to that red on the right side. Are you on that level or better? Yeah. Okay. Could you do me a favor and record this for us on the back? Blue or black? Next to that, could you make a list of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10? 1 through 8, we'll say, instead of 1 through 10. Yep, perfect. Okay. Your partner is going to help you with the reading and understanding the Treaty of Versailles, but then they're going to be your first opponent on Wednesday when you debate them. Okay? So you're going to work with them for 2 days, and then you're going to debate them on the 3rd day is basically how this works. So, you and Tracy are going to be ones. Could you write Tim and Tracy are ones when you get caught up? Okay, you and Patrick are going to be partners. Tommy and Sam are going to be 3s. Levi and Jeff are going to be 4s. Holly and Justin are going to be 5s. Holly and Justin Winkleman.
Holly could probably benchmark Justin.
That's not what this partner is for. She'd probably bench more than you too. Okay. So, you two don't have a partner in you, right? Okay, let's do this. Let's put you 3 as group 6. If Tegan shows up, we'll break it up into 2 groups of 2, but We'll see. Okay, here's the rule with where you sit. You're going to sit facing your partner. If you're a group of 3, you're all going to face each other. You cannot sit, listen, you cannot sit within a 5-foot radius of where any partner currently resides. So you can't say, come to me. You cannot be within 5 feet of where you're currently sitting. So find a spot away from where you're both at now, face each other, and we're going to be in canvas. Go ahead. Marissa, thank you for doing that. You're both going to have to move. There are lots of plugins if you need one. Is that within a 5-foot radius of where you were before? You cannot sit within a 5-foot radius of where either partner was before. I made this clear, Mr. Winkleman.
In the middle of it?
There's lots of plugins around.
Now, since you're wearing that shirt, did you read what's going on in Detroit public schools today? A bunch of teachers called in sick to protest. Because they say they're underpaid, their class sizes are too big, they're underfunded. So like as a screw you to their principals, a whole bunch of them called in sick today. So a bunch of schools had to close because they don't have enough subs. I was reading that last night about how all these Detroit teachers are like, our schools are terrible, we don't get paid enough, our kids don't get enough materials. Sounds pretty bad. Makes me appreciate Wyoming. Okay. Glad we established that. Now, here's how this is going to work. In Canvas, you guys will see, let's just go to modules. That's the easiest way to do this. That's kind of like units or folders. The post-war Treaty of Versailles module at the bottom. Okay. Modules was on the left once you go to class. Okay, you're in, go to courses. Okay, here's what you'll see. Yes, Mr. Quintard's right. It says Section 25 Outline. Okay, I made you a little outline to help you organize your thoughts and important details. This is not busy work. I do not believe in busy work. This is so you know what the heck you're talking about on Wednesday, because you're going to have basically a one-on-one debate against your partner on whether or not the U.S. Senate should ratify, sign off on, and join the Treaty of Versailles. Okay? So basically, this is how you figure out what's going on. So if you open that, there should be 2 links on that. Okay? The first one is the outline. It's a Google Doc. It is up to you, but I am perfectly okay with you having a shared copy between your partners. So if you want to do one together, have one person make a copy. If you would rather do your own, that's your choice. But it is perfectly acceptable to have a shared copy that you can all edit. What do you mean, what's your canvas? It's like chapter 25 outline, I think. Section 25 outline. So if you want to share it with your partners so you have one copy that you can both edit, that's totally your choice. The second link is just to TCI where we're going. So you can either use that or go to TCI to lesson 25. It doesn't matter how you get there. So what we're going to do is, as you read this with your partner, you're going to keep track of the important details, parts of Wilson's plan, what the other countries want, etc., in your outline that I made you. What our job is today and tomorrow is to figure out what's going on with the Treaty of Versailles, what different countries want versus what the United States wants, and what the final version of it looks like. If you're not an expert on our government, when there's a treaty that's been negotiated between countries, do we sign treaties? Does the United States enter into treaties today? We have tens of thousands of treaties, right? Who decides if we should join a treaty in our government?
Legislative.
It is part of the legislative branch. Does anyone know who decides on treaties? It's not the president.
Military.
Congress.
Within Congress, remember what Congress means? Could you be any more vague? Congress is two things collectively. The House of Representatives and... what's the other House of Congress called? The House of Representatives and...
Senate.
The Senate. The Senate is two people from every state get elected. So Wyoming has the same vote in there as New York and California. Senators decide if we should join into a treaty. So could President Obama go get a treaty written up with Iran and then our Senate vote it no? That happens. Okay, I'm not going to tell you the ending to this story yet because we're not there. But Wilson's going to go to Paris, as you guys know from world history class, and help write this treaty. But that doesn't mean it's finalized. It means you bring it back to the Senate, and those 100 people today would get to vote yes or no, and 2/3 of them have to say yes if you want to sign on to a treaty. So you'll learn more about that in government class, but that's the 30-second explanation for us today. Now, here's what today's going to be about when Wilson goes to Paris. How do you think he's going to be viewed and treated by the French? Remember that speech you guys gave as if you were him? How many of you gave a speech to ask Congress to declare war? Most of you did in this class. Say he did that, because that's the speech he gave. We join the war, the Allies win. It's a year later, and he says, let's go write this peace deal. How do you think the people in Paris are going to view him? That's an understatement.
It is terrible.
Okay, here's a picture of him when he showed up. Now, it's way zoomed out, but you can see a couple important details. All right, here's the first one. There are a lot of people on the street, like thousands, and it's pretty crammed. Definitely. What's this sign say? And if you speak Spanish, you know. What about Wilson? Okay, and like translate that into English roughly.
Like, I don't know.
Okay, it's kind of like We Love Wilson. Spanish speakers, what's Viva?
I'm in Spanish 1.
Okay, something.
Vegas.
I don't know.
Thank you. Long live Wilson.
It's pretty bad. He's not in a Spanish class and he knows that.
Well, you could just guess. Have you ever heard someone say like "Viva la Revolution"? Like "Long live the revolution"?
Just Cause 3.
Whatever that is. It's like saying, we really love this thing. That's what it translates to. In other words, we really love President Wilson. Okay? 2 million Frenchmen showed up for his arrival in Paris. Nobody today, not a president, not a king, not an astronaut, gets 2 million people to show up for anything. Okay, the only gathering of humans I know of today that ever gets above 2 million is the Hajj in Saudi Arabia, the Muslim pilgrimage. They get a couple million. He got 2 million to show up in Paris. That's insane. Okay, and if you read about in the introduction what some of the newspapers and people said about him, they called him a bunch of different fun nicknames, and everything was 100% positive. So to say he was well-liked when he showed up in Paris, that's an understatement. Do you understand what that means? Like, it's vague and doesn't give him credit or do it justice. He was revered. Like, he walked on water. So some things that they said about him. They called him Wilson the Just, like he's a really fair leader. One newspaper said, quote, "Never has a king, never has an emperor ever received such a welcome." Like, the French didn't do this for their own leaders in history, but he got 2 million people to show up and cheer and clap. Okay? They called him the savior of humanity. Wow, that's a lofty compliment. That's like what Christians call Jesus. It's like, I can't think of a higher compliment you could give someone. He saved the world, is what they're saying. They called him Moses from across the Atlantic, because Moses freed his people from slavery in Egypt, if you don't know the story. Okay? And they said, we want a Wilson peace. Like, we're so happy he's here, he's going to help us make a fair treaty. Now, obviously things aren't going to be that simple. If you did not take world history class last year, we spent a week negotiating our own treaty. What are some things that you remember about that? Things we debated, items that the treaty had to decide. Like after World War I, why do we need a treaty? Let's just say everybody stop fighting and go home, right?
Because it ain't going to work.
Well, what are some problems with just saying everybody go home?
People are like, no, it's fun.
They need like restrictions.
Do you trust the Germans to have tanks, submarines, and aircraft after World War
There was
I?
like a spot where they couldn't have anything.
Oh yeah, they can only have like 5, like something.
Did we put limits on their military?
Yes.
That's right.
Did we take some of their land?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Did we make them accept blame for the war entirely?
Yes.
Did we make them pay millions of dollars they didn't have to countries as damages?
You should have made them pay more. But we didn't.
Well, you should know how the story ends, because making them pay money they didn't have, how'd that work out?
They came back to us and we gave them money.
How do they pay you money that they don't have?
Borrow from someone else.
Borrow from their.
What did they do?
They restarted
They started printing money. And what happens to the value of your money that's out there already if you print more? It goes down. And when it goes down really, really fast, it's called really fast inflation. Hyperinflation. So pretend you had $1 million bill today. You'd be like, wow, I'm rich. Right? There were trillion Deutschmarks printed. Like $1 trillion bill. That wouldn't buy you a loaf of bread. Like, that was worthless. Because they just add zeros to the bills to make them bigger, and then the value of your money goes down. So here's the big lesson, that if you forgot this, you cannot ever forget this in life. Whether it's dealing with your twin, or being the leader of a country, there are only 2 ways to have a lasting peace. Okay, so say your twins stole your wallet, you have one of those things you argue about. Happens all the time, right? There's only 2 ways to settle those and have the peace actually last. Does anyone know one of those ways?
Apologizing.
Okay, you're the victor, you won the argument or the discussion or the war. There's only 2 ways you can treat the losing side that will ensure the peace lasts. And they're opposite ways. Tim?
Yeah, one like kill all of them and take over.
How does the one guy who wasn't in world history class know this?
Wait, what'd you say?
Kill everybody.
That's what I said, kill them.
The Quintard method. Okay, and this does work. Of course it works. Remember the Romans and the Carthaginians from world history, the Punic Wars, Hannibal versus Scipio. Hannibal had the elephants, remember him? After the Romans defeated Carthage, they made him sign that treaty that said, if you guys ever get an army again, we'll kill you all. And the Romans knew they'll break the treaty. And they went to Carthage, their capital city. They killed every single man. They enslaved every single woman and child. And they burned the city down so thoroughly that historians aren't even sure where it is today. Are they going to have a problem with Carthage after they do that? There is no Carthage to have a problem with. They're all dead, enslaved, and their city doesn't exist. Now, there's a problem with that solution. And I know some of you think that is applicable to Syria and Iraq today.
Yeah.
Many of those people that you are killing and enslaving are innocent people, civilians. There are repercussions to that. It makes people mad. It's morally wrong to kill someone who didn't do anything to deserve it.
But what about when
Now, listen. What matters, though, does that solve the problem?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it does. Do we all agree the Quintard method, kill everyone, solves the problem?
Yeah.
I didn't say is it a good solution, is it morally acceptable, but does it work?
Yeah.
Yes. Here's the problem with that solution. Can we do that with Germany in 1919? Can we really say kill everyone, break up Germany, just wipe Germany off the map? We won't have another Germany problem because it won't exist. The problem is millions of civilians, like your ancestors, are dead, enslaved, whatever we did to them. Morally, like, that's not okay. You can't do that today. Nuke 'em would be the equivalent, what you say all the time in here.
Hydrogen bomb.
People are not okay with that. It's not realistic, but it works. There's only one other way that truly works to settle that argument. No.
Have someone else kill him so you don't have to.
It's not, killing is not involved. How do you treat them after you win the war or the argument?
And like doing things for them and to build up a relationship together.
Very simply put, how do you treat them?
Pretty good.
Good.
Treat them nicely and well. But here's what's hard. When you just got done fighting them, whether it's arguing, throwing punches, in this case, millions of your men dying, is it hard to swallow that you're going to have to be nice to the person who killed all those people?
How many people did it, though? How many people still ended up killing them?
Well, we're talking about when you make a peace treaty.
Right.
Wilson is going to say, let's be nice to Germany and treat them well. But you already know what the British and the French are going to say. Look at our blown up country. It's because of the Germans. Why would we be nice to them? They started this war. Let's punish them.
Let's kill them.
Okay? This is the lesson. There are only two ways to have a lasting peace. Pull a Rome and kill them all. That is not it's not morally acceptable today, but it does work. Okay? It's worked throughout history. The only other way is to treat them fairly and be their friend. Anything in between never lasts. Twins, can you attest to this? When you win an argument and you rub it in their face, okay, I'm a twin, don't forget this. When we beat Pinedale in football, do I have a platform to talk some big-time smack at Thanksgiving dinner?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. For a year, I can say whatever I want, but here's the thing. If I talk smack and rub it in his face and make a big deal, what's he going to do to me the next year if they win? Twice what I did to him. And you see what happens. Twins know this. It just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. So, the lesson is simple, and it applies to every one of you. I don't care if it's your mom, your little sister, if you're the Secretary of State that makes these treaties in 20 years. There's only two ways to have a lasting peace. Kill them all or be their friend. Nothing in between will last. And you guys know this. The narrative that we historians give is the Treaty of Versailles is a grade A screw-up. And it's basically going to put a pause on World War I. Things get worse and bigger, and then World War II is going to happen and be even worse than World War I. Why, most people say? This treaty was so harsh on Germany. It didn't kill them all, but it wasn't nice, which just prolongs the inevitable. And that's not to excuse the horrible things that were done in Germany and other places to civilians and Jews and innocent people. But if we would have been nice to them, guys like Hitler wouldn't have had an opportunity to come to power. Okay? So indirectly, this is going to cause World War II. We know that. If you forgot that, you should have known this all last year in world history.
So it didn't work, so we should have just killed him and been done.
Okay, well, honestly, if you look at the numbers, it'd probably be about a wash. If you said, let's kill all the Germans and break up their country in 1919 versus let's let World War II happen. I mean, it's a fun question to ask. Here's a good one, and we'll get to World War II in a couple of weeks. Let's say you have a nuclear weapon in 1938 when World War II is just starting. And you could drop that nuclear weapon on Berlin, Germany, kill 2.5 million people, including all the Nazis and Hitler, and avoid World War II. Would you do it?
Yes.
Because here's the hard thing. 99% of the people you're killing, it's some lady who's working in her garden and some guy who's like teaching history class at the time. Yeah, you're going to kill Hitler and his buddies, but you're going to kill 2.5 million innocent people. To put that in context, the Soviets, if you're not familiar, lost 20 million people in World War II. So here's what you say. Here's the simple explanation. 2.5 million dead. That saves tens of millions of lives,
Exactly.
including no Americans will die.
Yeah. Should have done it.
That's why history's fun. It's a good question to ask.
Why wouldn't people not jump to saying yes?
And you say armor.
Because how many of you have relatives that would die?
Yeah.
How many of you may not be sitting here?
That is it.
But if we ask this question in Germany, I think I know what all the Germans would say.
The problem is that if you bomb Berlin this
At least
time,
we
then
like-
everyone was also behind Hitler, and then these ideas would be becoming more bigger and bigger, and then they would be much more bad, and also maybe branch and say, okay, America did that, so...
But the
Absolutely.
Germans would be dead, so there's...
No, we're just talking about their capital city, like Washington, D.C.
Well,
Yeah, then they go to Nuremberg and start their new thing, so... It's not
And here's the other answer. At least in war, you have a fighting chance. Hopefully most of the casualties are military men, not civilians, right? You drop a nuclear bomb on Berlin, 99% of who you're killing is grandmas and little kids and average Joes.
well, that's their fault. They shouldn't have went there. They should have moved.
And if someone said that about Big Piney, you would feel differently.
No,
Okay.
probably not.
Justin, do you have a question? Am I really? The whole time? That's okay.
I can't even see the top of it. Oh, you can barely see the top of your head. Like about this much.
Okay. Thank you for telling me. Now, we have to figure out, is this treaty something the United States wants to be a part of? Then you're going to have a debate on Wednesday. I'm going to pick your side. One of you is going to say, yes, let's sign on to it. One of you is going to say, no way, let's not sign on to it. We have to know what it's about and what Wilson wanted before we can do that. So, here's how it's going to work. If you guys all go to Section 2, Wilson's Vision for Peace. The main idea is a little blue thing is handy, but you don't have to do it. Following in your outline, I broke each little section up into letters, and each letter has 2 numbers underneath it. You can read this however you would like. To yourself, on your own, out loud with your partner, read it all together, you each read half, it's up to you. This section is about what Wilson wanted when he showed up in Paris. So we're going to read this and keep track in our outline the important details that we find. Okay? So I'm going to let you read that, come up with a plan as a group of how you're going to read that, and keep track of what you read in your outline.